guest today is unlike any other guest we've had in the previous episodes. And that's because we are all asked to be indoors, and this person designs such beautiful outdoor spaces that we are forced to be outdoors. It's not about breaking the law, it's about enjoying the outdoor space. And I'm talking about David Gates, the President Emeritus of Gates and Associates. Welcome, David.
Thank you. Happy to
How
be.
are you doing during this whole period when we were all sheltered in place? How does landscape behave during shelter in place?
Actually, everyone is discovering the landscape. They're growing their own food. They're finding that the outdoors is maybe a more important place than it was just a short while ago, which is for landscape architects a good thing.
So tell us your role in Gates and Associates, and how long have you done this, and what made you do this to begin with?
Yeah, actually, it goes way back when I was a young punk kid, always interested in the sciences and the arts. So people at Berkeley, bless their hearts, said, come look at our program at Cal. So I was probably 15 years old and looked at the department and said, that's for me. So I've been practicing in the Bay Area, from the Bay Area, for 43 years. I went to Cal, I went to Harvard, I taught at Cal for 10 years in the landscape department, and Linda and I formed a partnership literally in 77, and we've been running a business ever since. So at this point, the children, our two daughters, especially one, Casey, is taking over the business, and she will be the runner of the business on her own in short time. So right now I'm kind of in between. I'm helping out in key areas. I'm doing more volunteer works. As you know, I'm on the design review board here in San Ramon. And I'm taking on some key consulting jobs, and some of them are pro bono, like MUDs. So we'll do that, because it's a very important part of the community, and it's very close to us as an outdoor space, and it's actually within a stone's throw of our office. So a lot of good reasons to take a look at that.
And I'm glad you talked about giving back to the community in this manner. When you look at space, when you look at a project, when do you decide that this is something we can do, even though the challenges may be there with this space? What is it that you immediately gravitate towards to take on as a project?
Well, I think our job and my particular focus is basically having a vision. How do you put people on the land? That's what we do. So what is it? What are the cultural patterns we're looking for? And how well is that piece of land suitable for those activities? So whether it's Bishop Ranch going through their master plan, which the city's doing, which I think will be an incredible change, a very good one, or whether it's a park, or whether it's planting around a retail center. It's all important visually, important culturally, important economically. So it creates the place, and that's, the outside is probably just second to the urban design pattern, which is the architecture and the form of our pattern, people patterns on the land. So we're part of that, and we will look at the feasibility of things. Is it possible? What's the good side? What's the downside, of putting an activity on the land? Certain things you automatically don't want to do. You don't want to put an international airport in San Ramon. There would be a lot of reasons not to do that, quality of life reasons. So, but we get asked to work on feasibilities for just about everything. So we look at it and say, here's what's good and here's what's less good, and what are the trade-offs for trying to do something you think you want to do.
So if somebody came for an interview and they said their vision to your company, and they said their vision is to have an international airport in San Ramon, that's an automatic no, I guess, for being hired and being part of the team.
Certain things just don't make sense. And so a lot of folks will come to us with an economic reality that makes sense to them. So, there are many views of everything. So we will look at the other realities, maybe beyond the economic, the environmental, the quality of life issues that may come into play, and see how they all balance. That's kind of our part of it. Usually it's a very vast team of very intelligent people looking at all aspects of what the change might be, including people like yourself. If you're part of the public will, those key players for different agencies are really critical at sort of being a filter of what is good for this community and what's less good. So we're a player in that group of people making decisions for our society and for the land.
So let's talk about MUDS. Now, MUDS is a very historical piece of our area, and you decided to be a part of it. Take us back to the time when this conversation started, and what was the initial thought that would you be doing this, would you not be doing this, and what made you eventually think that this was a good idea to give back?
Well, I think Frenette and other key players in the community called and asked if we would be willing to participate. And knowing the site well, having used the site, we used to have our office annual meetings at MUDS. We'd go there and have a nice lunch. And so it's close to us in a number of ways. So Abram Wilson called and Frenette called and some other people we really respect and have worked with for a long while in the community. You're new to me, but I think you have a similar great will and compassion. So our job, is to take a look at this and try to help understand what it can be, knowing what it has been. And we see huge potentials, especially when you have a piece of property with qualities that the MUD site has, with the creek and the visibility and the good location next to some density and traffic access. It has a lot of aspects that are very obviously valuable to the community. So I think our role, I think there are a number of good players on Frenette's team. So we've worked with them for years, like NGO and Dolan and Perry, really good people. So our goal is to look at the landscape architectural component to this property and see what we can do by way of expressing the vision and understanding the value and understanding how it could benefit the community in a number of ways. I think that's our role.
And we thank you for being a part of this project. You talked about the cultural aspects of any space, any outdoor space. Now, when this is still an unfolding plan, so a vision, a concrete vision is not yet established. But when you talk about the cultural aspects of landscape design, could you give us an example of how the diverse community can utilize the space as you are envisioning it right now, as of today?
Yeah, we have a process for that. We start with the land, and this is sort of as you would look at the process of site planning and landscape architecture. So what is the land? What is it physically? What is it visually? What is it environmentally? It has creeks, it has development, it has sewer lines, it has buildings, it has a presence in the community, although it could be stronger. So analyze what's there, the trees, the history, then look at what we call programming. So what uses would be appropriate for the San Ramon resident and maybe beyond San Ramon, maybe others. Especially important today with COVID-19 out there, changing lifestyle patterns. I think you have a lot of racial tension going on now, which might ask us to look at other patterns. So what we would do is say, what is the community and what are the uses appropriate? That's what we call the program. So if outdoors is suddenly more important than being indoors because of distancing reasons and others, huge opportunity there. So what would be appropriate uses for the community that are outdoors? Maybe if it becomes a restaurant again, you can actually distance properly. Eating outdoors is going to come back quicker than eating indoors. So that's one example. All sorts of ways of connecting man and nature or cultural patterns next to natural patterns. I think the marriage of the two is critical for our society, and maybe those of us who have been cooped up inside now see more value to the external natural systems. So you look at that particular site with the creek, the vegetation, the hydrology, the history, all of the aspects there, if they became available to users, mostly San Ramon residents, I assume, what a huge opportunity. And what of those does the community need? Certainly the farm to fork, which has been part of the legacy there, is going to be, in my opinion, much more important in the near future. Other things that we haven't even thought about. What are other kinds of uses that are going to pop up in the next 6 months or 6 years that might have a place, an opportunity to be serviced from that property? So, I think that's what determining the vision will be. And then there's certainly constraints. There's the economic side of it. There's the fact that the creek has some hydrologic issues through erosion, which will have some economic impacts. They will impact the usability, the rehab of the building, structurally, the economics of that, the usefulness of that. That's why there's a team. So the structural engineer and the architect and the earth science people like NGO will all have part of the vision. And we probably end up being one of the ones to put it all together. All the pieces will lead to a solution, probably a solution that takes place over time. So you might have a phase one that gets it up and running, and certain parts of it are very useful. Other phases may take longer and a little more input from the community or a little more financial support. So we would look at the total package of what does it want to be long-term, and what are the integrated steps that get you from phase one to phase two to phase 10. So that's part of the puzzle as well.
So the challenges, when you were talking about the challenges, there are challenges with this property, but it's not an impossible task that it cannot be handled with a professional team working on it. The creek is a challenge. Is there anything else you see as a potential challenge that would need to be addressed short-term or long-term?
I think there are architectural aspects of it. When you have public access to a building and public occupancy, there are many requirements about fire safety, about structural safety, earthquake, and so I'm sure that the architecture will need some support. And I think the presence, I think it's a rather hidden property right now. I think one of the keys is to make it accessible visually and otherwise. So maybe how you enter it, maybe some signage, or maybe the nature of the interface between the land and the community is an important one. So maybe the parking moves, or maybe there's parking in two areas. Make it available. If there was, maybe phase one is a simple parking area for as few as 10 or 15 cars. People can arrive by car, by bicycle, or walking, and maybe there's a promenade where you walk through it. You feel comfortable day, and maybe not so much at night, but maybe there's just a place to come walk through and appreciate the creek and appreciate the history. Maybe you don't even have to use the buildings to do that. Maybe there's just a very nice pathway and some places to sit outside and converse. So a very light change, a very light touch that's not economically dependent on structural aspects of the building or retaining the creek for a 50-year flood or 100-year flood event. So maybe it's usable now. So what are those uses, and what form does that use take early on? And then you'll build a momentum, you'll build a coalition, you'll build knowledge and support for the place from the public, and that's when it takes off. It's like an airplane gaining elevation and getting up where it's really available and everybody supports it because they know it's there and they want to help it.
So it's our little airplane in San Ramon minus the airport.
Yeah, sorry about the
Yeah,
airport.
well, I couldn't help but mention that. Now,
Yep.
you mentioned you used to be at that restaurant for luncheons and for whatever reasons. So you saw it at its functional best. Um, are there elements of it that you would like to retain as you see the potential for landscape design for that area? Or are you looking at creating a whole different um, thing which is more reflective of modern thinking and modern time? I mean, even that was modern, but our thinking is changing pretty rapidly. So
I think it's, we get involved in retrofits. We've done military bases that have been retrofitted, and one of our slogans is getting people outside. Another is looking forward to the past. And what that means is, as you bring in technology and new patterns, don't forget the old ones. You know, I think the magic today is the old and the new together give you a new metric for what it is. So to me, the history is very important. The way it was used, there are remnant orchards there, there are remnant gardens there, there are pathways down to the creek that were used. So all of those have value. I think the MUD's paradigm was ahead of its time. The farm to fork is not a new idea, but this is one where it was actually played out rather successfully, you know, and so I think that's very valuable. And I would love to see that legacy continue as much as possible. But at the same time, what are these new uses that are going to pop up on us that we don't even know about yet, that we can bring to the side and let them work in parallel with the historical uses? So to me, that's half the magic of it. So, but the first part, I think, is to bring the history back and make it usable, you know, and that's going to be the economic directive as well. You know, we've got to follow the economic realities of what we have. So to preserve some of those landscape historic elements, probably the low-hanging fruit, no pun intended here, that we can bring and take advantage of on this side.
so when you start working on a project and then you are in the middle of it, in the thick of it, and then you start getting the community excited and they want to provide their input of what they are seeing, do you happen to have examples, or have you ever done it, of doing an about turn and in an attempt to take in the input and change some things and create a whole different thing out of what you started out with?
So I think your question was, how does one move forward with community needs that we don't see right now and will need to understand in the future? I mean, is that a reasonable paraphrase?
And input. Maybe some residents are not as engaged at this time. They're not sure of what's going on. And then once you have your designs and everything ready to implement, then comes a wave of community engagement where everybody wants to provide their thoughts and input. And then do you see that and say, okay, I can take in some elements and then tweak your plans? Are you flexible in those plans?
Actually, a pretty large part of our business today is what we call outreach. And especially with public work and often in private work as well, I think it's critical that you have public empathy for the process and the product. So it means you've got to sit back and ask the community, you know, what is your vision, so that we don't just create our own vision and then drop it on the community. A great example now, we, believe it or not, are working on a police facility in Vallejo. And Vallejo is a minority community, and Vallejo is in anguish right now for a number of reasons, and it's regarding the police. So we are recommending to the city is doing this project, to create an outreach process where our vision is to create an opportunity for the public, mostly the Black community, to be able to use this police plaza as a format for dialogue. So, and we don't know what that is, but our vision is, instead of us putting a piece of art out there, that we work with the community, and maybe we create a canvas or a blackboard. So the community creates the art on the blackboard. We put the blackboard there, but the community puts what it wants on the blackboard. So it's not some elite folks creating a plan that we hope everybody buys into, but it's a public plan. And so steering committees, outreach opportunities, ongoing dialogue. The ideal plan is one that everybody believes in and everybody supports. So that's slightly different. We're product oriented and we create the vision. We're process oriented in that we want the vision to be for everyone. We're not a bunch of elites sitting with a black box and magically creating this wonderful thing that everybody might love. Although we love doing the design and we love the creative part of it, but it's got to be a joint venture.
So what has been your most challenging project to date when you compare it to MUDS? Would you say MUDS is one of the more challenging ones, or is it in a different category altogether?
Yeah, the challenge for us is never the design. I mean, design is fun and easy and all those things. The challenge is always political. And there's a very striking example we did in Emeryville for a big retail center. We did a park, and it's called Memorialization Park. The shopping center was on top of a creek, and the creek was very, very important for the Native American community. It had shell mounds, it had very vast history. So the retail developers worked with the local tribe and created a design, and the tribe said, nope, we don't like it. So they brought in another team and they created another design, and the tribe said, no, it's not right, it doesn't work, don't do this. So they called us, we were the third designers involved, and they said, we have 6 months to complete this, otherwise we can't open our businesses. This is a timeline, this is critical. So we met with the tribe, we came up with a design. We told them how we were going to bring history to fore and let it be the essence of this place. So we have the shell mounds on the side of a building. We have wire baskets that were found within the shell mound. The whole experience, you enter through these stone monoliths, and it shows you the experience that was the essence of that site for the Native American community, literally for thousands of years. They approved it. So always for us, the imagination and the design is the fun part. The hard part is the dialogue and getting it to a point where all the right stakeholders and key players are in an agreement as to what is the most appropriate cultural pattern that sits on that very special piece of land. So relatively, this is not that complicated a site for us.
So it's all about partnerships. It's how strong the partnerships are and how well they are working with each other to support each other. That's what I'm hearing.
And how well we communicate. The community speaks, we listen, we interpret, we put forth an idea. So it's that continuum from idea to listen to form. All of it is one large interactive plan. So it has to have many players. We're happy to do the part we do, and we think we do it well, but it's always to be judged. So the process is the key. The product becomes the result of the process. So we're one player in that.
So what can we as residents do to provide the support that you would need to get this project to be completed within a reasonable time frame, whatever you are looking at? What is the residents' responsibility? It is a part of our history, so residents have some investment in it for that part. What can everyone do?
I think actually it's a very good start. I think the technical side is well spoken for. So to me, the next part of it is the stakeholders, people like yourself and Frenette, people who would have a vested interest and would be willing to take the time and put the energy on the table to get the dialogue going. And I think once we can come up with a vision that is reasonably agreed upon, reasonable consensus, it may never be a total consensus. And then that unleashes the economic aspects of it and the political will for it. All of those things can happen. But I think Ned is looking at maybe getting something on the table as a point of dialogue, then bringing in the stakeholders to be determined who and what, people like yourselves, who would have the time and energy to organize the dialogue and let that first impression go through the ringer. What's good about it? What's not good about it? Get rid of ego, just put it up there and say, it could be, it should be, it shouldn't be, whatever it is, get it out there and then go through that process. And out of that will come a program pattern that seems reasonable from which we can create the vision on paper and in different ways so people understand it. It's difficult. It's not everybody reads plans. It takes a lot of time and energy to express what the plan is. And it's unfair to expect people to bring their own knowledge and quickly understand what this vision is. It takes time to unfold the vision and make it digestible to people who don't do this every day. So that's the hard part.
So communication, engagement, working with each other in a manner that's making this project become more solidified and moving forward through the processes. Those are the challenges as I see it moving forward. It's not the plan itself. Anything else about this project that you would like to highlight?
I would like to say your definition of that was perfect. Couldn't do it better. I mean, that in essence is the need. I love it. And I think the city, just to pontificate, I think the city does a good job of this. They're putting the pedestrian bridge over a key part of the community. They've had a lot of outreach. They had a lot of input electronically. The city is actually quite good at the outreach process and understands it well. Also, they're quite good at determining how to evaluate all that and come through. So you've got a planning staff and a design staff that are actually quite good and quite useful. So I think at some point they become critical. But I think the key is, I think, to just unleash it and get it in front of people so people understand it's out there and it is something that needs attention. Because I think it's a great opportunity.
It is. And this is one of the ways we are trying to get the message out to the community of what you shared today, of what the vision is and how this is going to benefit the bigger community. It's not just for San Ramon. I'm looking at it outside San Ramon that can come and utilize the space.
Yeah, I agree. I think there's huge opportunity for that.
So thank you for sharing that. I have a question. Each team member from your company has a superhero name. And what is yours? Can you tell us? And why is that your name?
A superhero.
Your name is Captain Granite.
Design, I guess. I guess the one thing that we would pride ourselves in is being able to go through this process, and the result of it is something unique and special and creates a place, a reality. So whatever we do is going to be different every time we do it, but I would like to think we do it in a way that is respectful and special to each particular community and each particular cultural pattern. So, I guess Captain Design, is there such a thing as that? I doubt it. I would have to ask my grandkids, what the latest super cartoon hero is today. There are many.
Do you feel like a superhero after all these years being in this field?
No, not really. I think we're a service. We do windows, basically, and we're a piece. We're a bit player, but I think we take great pride in the part we do. And we worked on Central Park here. There are a lot of Mud's Restaurant. There are a lot of pieces that we've done in the community, which we're proud of. So I think, but but I don't think we're superheroes. I think we're team players, and we bring a certain, I guess it's almost an aptitude or a talent to the team. It's like we've learned how to play the piano, and maybe we had the opportunity to be good piano players from day one, but we focused on playing the piano. So we think we create good music with the piano. And I think there are others who do that, but we were lucky to find our niche, and we had a chance to grow in that niche, and we've been doing it now for 43 years. So there must be.
And we are very fortunate to have a good piano player in our communities. Thank you for that service. One last question. Have you ever done landscape design for any international airport?
You mean other than one proposed for here?
Yes. Obviously, you didn't work on that one.
We have worked on airports in different areas. Tracy, particularly the FAA and all the players involved. So we have worked on airports, yeah. But I'm hoping we're not going to be working on one here.
That would be a little traumatic for everyone, including commuters. But thank you so much, David. I really enjoyed speaking to you and learning a little bit more about your vision for our community. And we appreciate your time. Thank you for sharing all the information.
I hope it's useful and has value. My pleasure. Happy to do it.
Thank you.